I don't usually start off my podcasts like this, but if this podcast was a football match and you were commentating on it, how would you introduce the game?
I think it's going to be an intriguing matchup between us. I can't wait to hear what your questions are going to be. I'm looking forward to it.
That's how the intro is today. But before we get this show on the road, I've had a previous chat with a previous guest, and as I said off camera here, Ian, that this guest that I will not mention, but he said that you're a big fan of musicals.
Yes.
How many times have you seen Les Miserables?
Well, yeah, that would be, I think it's something like 24, 25 times now. I should explain that in that I know that sounds a bit sad, but for a long time, I lived in London when I was a lot younger. Mm-hmm. And my flatmate at the time worked for Ticketmaster, the ticket agency. And on quite a few occasions, they had returns at the last minute. And I used to work, and so did he, obviously, in the centre of London. So at about half hour's notice, we used to get these late returns that they weren't able to sell. So we used to go and watch Phantom of the Opera, Les Miserables. So a lot of those 24 times were back then, which is something to do when you're young lads in London. And just really got into it. Forever got it on in the car, singing along to it badly. And just love Les Miserables, Phantom of the Opera. It's a good escape from the occasional madness of football as well.
Oh, yes, just the occasional madness. So what was the first game you did commentary on?
The very first game I did was for Capital Radio in London when I started off working for them, and it was with Steve Wilson. We did a joint commentary, now Match of the Day commentator. Done all right for himself, as Steve. And we did a half each of Barnet versus Carlisle. It was really hard work. I think he was a bit better than me. But you got to start somewhere. I dread to think if I ever heard that commentary back what I sounded like. Hopefully over the following 30 years or so, I've improved a little bit anyway.
Mm-hmm. So, of course, with the fact that you weren't you covering Celtic versus Hibs last night?
Yes, I was, yeah.
Well, so I understand the life of a commentator. You're basically traveling all over the country to cover X, Y, and Z in the space of a week. How did COVID affect your work?
Yeah, I mean, we've been lucky and privileged enough to still be able to go to the games, obviously, to commentate on them. But it's been a really weird, surreal, bizarre experience. I mean, I started doing games in June when the Premier League continued from last season, and the Championship in England as well. So I've been doing them quite a while now behind closed doors, and it's something that you're never going to get used to. And when you get a really good game as well, you find yourself saying, "Just imagine what it'd be like with fans." And I try to say to myself, "I've got to stop saying that," but I still say it every time. Just imagine what it would be like with fans here. And I know we've had a setback at the moment, but I just hope, I don't know when it'll be, but it'll be great when we do get decent crowds back inside the stadiums. It's been really weird. We turn up at the stadiums and you can't actually go anywhere apart from, for us, the television gantry because of because of the restrictions. So, there's no go zones in the stadium as well for us. So you find yourself sitting in the car, especially in the cold weather, for a bit longer before going up to the gantry doing the game. And it's just weird. And sometimes you can hear yourself echoing around the stadium. You can hear other commentators shouting. You can hear the coaches, which has actually been quite fascinating on occasion. But all in all, an experience that I don't want to go on for much longer. I'm yearning to be stuck in a post-match traffic jam coming away from a football match again.
So obviously we've had basically what would be I'd quite happily say it's been a one horse race this season in Scotland in terms of the Premiership. How different do you think the league would have been had we had fans in the grounds?
I don't know. That's a tricky one because it's a hard one to say that. I think players are a strange breed, and to be fair to them, I think they've been brilliant by and large. They've just got on with it, got on with games. We've still had some cracking matches. and they've been good at just getting on with what they do. I don't think anyone was expecting this. I was expecting quite a close title race. I thought, I love it when it goes the distance, but I think most people have been surprised at the way Celtic have spiraled this season, and there's been so many incidents involving them sort of off the pitch and on the pitch, and now they're a long way behind. And even with 3 games in hand, surely even the most diehard Celtic fan would be thinking that they'd be struggling to make up that 21 points, even with the 3 games in hand, and even with 2 more Old Firm games. Largely because, to be fair to Rangers, they've been absolutely relentless, and they're not played brilliantly over the festive period, but they eked out results, which champions always do. And to win 15 matches in a row is some achievement, and to be where they are. And yes, I know the last couple of seasons they flopped in the second half of the season, but it's a different look to them this time around, and they don't look like they'll be going in for that again.
Mm-hmm. So is there anything you think that COVID has changed in football that may remain the same once we return to any sort of normality?
I don't know. It's hard to imagine. I mean, all the interviews sort of post-match and pre-match are done outside, whether it's raining or not, from a distance. I think that will probably continue for quite a while. I think there will be, certain areas in grounds where you can't go if you're media, and obviously will be same for fans if they come back. There's red, amber, and green zones, and the red zones rightly around the pitch and the players who need the protection. Mm-hmm. So I think even when fans do come back in, I imagine it'll be pretty similar for a while until everyone gets back up to full stadiums and the like, and we get back to some sort of normality and roll on the day that it finally happens. But no, it's all been very odd and very weird. But like I say, we have been lucky enough to be at the games watching them, and that's been terrific for us. Sometimes people say you don't realise how lucky you are to be a commentator, but we all do, that's for sure. But there's been so many occasions, as I say, where I just wish that, the fans could have shared it actually inside the arenas.
Mm-hmm. Now, I believe you commentated over the best game in Scottish football, which was Motherwell 6, Hibs 6.
Ah, yes, 2010.
What can you remember from that game?
Quite a lot. I remember turning up. It was a midweek game, and it was end of season. I think they were both sort of going for European spot, as I recall, but it didn't have it was one of those sort of end of season feel games to it, and I learned something that day. I learned that you should never judge a game like that because you never know what might happen, and so it proved. And it was just an extraordinary game where, obviously, there were just goals galore flying in first half, and it was 6-2 up. Motherwell get back to 5-6. I remember saying at 3-6, I think, that this is not beyond Motherwell, the way Hibs were actually defending. And they got back to 5-6, and then Ross Forbes has a penalty saved by Graham Smith, who'd given away the penalty in rash fashion. And then Jukovic comes up with his Van Basten-esque equaliser in injury time. And it was just extraordinary. And sadly, we'll probably never see the like again. We can remain hopeful that we do. But yeah, it was just one of those one-off nights that will certainly never be forgotten.
Yeah, as a Motherwell fan, it's honestly one of the best feelings I've ever had. And I never had the pleasure of being at the game because, of course, I live in Fife. So on a school night, it was a bit difficult at times. But to be watching the game, and we had a Hibs fan over watching the game with us, and at 6-2 he was just giving the biggest smiles, and then as soon as we got 3, 4, 5, and me and my dad were just dancing about in the living room like.
But by the way, if you scored the penalty, you might have won it 7-6, should I?
I honestly don't think we would have. I think we'd have been happy with 6 each if we scored the penalty. So, if anything, missing the penalty was a blessing in disguise, just on an emotional level.
Yeah, it was. It was just such an incredible game. I actually did another game once where there were 12 goals as well, but it was an 8-4 in an FA Cup tie, Walsall Torquay for radio many years ago, and that was, I think, if I remember correctly, it was something like 2-2 or 3-3 going into extra time, and there were goals galore in extra time. Who said extra time was boring? Not in that case. But so I've been lucky enough to do 2 12-goal games, but Motherwell Hibs was certainly top of the list.
Certainly up there. But apart from obviously the Jukovic volley, which was a fantastic bit of commentary from yourself.
Jukovic! Oh wow! Oh wow! Lucas Jukovic! It's the comeback of comeback!
What is the best goal you've witnessed live?
Well, I think I've been lucky enough to see quite a few. And obviously Henrik Larsson's sensational chip for Celtic in the Old Firm, Martin O'Neill's first Old Firm game back in 2000 was pretty special. I've just seen so many over the years. I remember Pedro Mendes one for Rangers as I level it up there 1-1 on the Old Firm count. But so many great goals in those occasions and generally. And I remember watching Man United a few years back when I was commentating on them against West Ham, who I actually support. And United won 7-1 and they were phenomenal that day. And Beckham sent one into the top corner from range. And, you know, I love goals that go in the top corner. It's like they just look great, especially the cannon off a post or the underside of the bar. So I've been lucky. There's been so many over the years.
So obviously you've touched upon there that you had, I think, for West Ham. How difficult is it trying to conceal your emotion for the team that you support when you're commentating on the opposition scoring a goal?
It's very easy because your professionalism takes over. Nobody believes you, but it is actually true. I mean, I commentated on West Ham in 2 playoff finals. They lost the first one to Crystal Palace. And at full-time whistle, I was sort of wrapping up, and the director came through my headphones and said, "Oh, sorry about your team." And I'd actually forgotten that it was my team because I'd been so wrapped up in the occasion of the game because your professional hat went on. And then the following year, West Ham went back and won a playoff game. So that was pretty special. But I've also commentated on them losing not only 7-1 in that game I mentioned to Manchester United, but also 7-1 as well at Blackburn. So, you know, you kind of got used to days like that being a West Ham fan. But yeah, absolutely. It's people don't believe it, but it is true. You have no feeling during the game because you have to be unbiased, which I most definitely am, even though I often get accused of not being in Scotland.
Yeah, I find that very difficult, especially because what we do on my channel is we've got a sort of show where we've sort of taken bits and pieces. So for example, from Gillette Soccer Saturday, from Off the Ball, we'll just take bits and pieces from every bit of football show that we've seen, and we'll try and combine it together, see what actually works. And what we do at the moment is, like, for example, from the Champions League group stages, we did Soccer Saturday style show where we got someone to cover each and every game on a live stream, and we just talked about every game separately. And then we do watch alongs for basically every Scottish match as well that's televised. So whenever it's a Motherwell game, for me, I can never show like during the 90 minutes, I'm completely Motherwell hats on. But after the game, I'll sit and happily do an analysis of what went wrong for Motherwell, and I'll happily just talk about what decisions the referee could have maybe got in a better in terms of hindsight, etc., and try and just go through all the emotions of just being a neutral as well.
Yes.
So I try and give it the best of both worlds, but sometimes it's a bit more difficult for myself.
Yeah, no, I get that as well, and it's great being a fan. And I would say that in doing the job that I've done now for a long, long time, I wouldn't say you become sort of less of a fan, but it does sort of take a little bit off, probably being a supporter. And when I used to go to West Ham games home and away when I lived in London, and and now I only really get to see them when I cover them, which has not been very often lately, but. I get that, but listen, you can't take away the passion of being a football fan. That's what everyone's in it for.
Yeah, absolutely, and the fact that you're a commentator, that's one of the things that I would potentially want to go and do when I'm older and wiser. But anything in football for me, that would just be a plus, to be honest.
Well, I'm older, but I'm not much wiser, so I don't know if I can help you there. But yeah, keep at it. It's all very rewarding. It's a brilliant job. I mean, to go around watching football matches for a living, you can't really argue with that, can you?
No, you really cannot. So what is your favourite ground that you've worked at?
Well, I've been lucky again to have been at so many. I probably would say Upton Park in a bit of a biased way because I actually probably the real, although I did hospital radio when I was young, but the first kind of sort of broadcasting gig, I guess, was doing the tannoy at West Ham. When I was only 21, and obviously that was a dream job for me working there. So Upton Park's always had a special place in my heart. No longer around. Well, Blocker Flats probably now, but of the English grounds, I would say Old Trafford always had a really special feel to it. Villa Park as well is a tremendous arena to work in. I like Goodison, the old style, and I kind of like the older grounds quite a lot because they're just a throwback. I mean, I do quite a few games at Burnley, and it's proper old school. It's a terrific club, friendly people. And some people don't like watching Burnley, but I actually do like watching Burnley because I think they've got some decent players, but also players who just give it 100% every week in, week out, know what they're about. So I tend to go for the older arenas in Scotland. There's quite a few. Obviously, Celtic and Rangers they're always good grounds to work at. I quite like Tannadice because the way the gantry is gives you a perfect view. Hearts, great atmosphere. Hibs, the same. There's been so many, but again, I hark back to a Scottish Cup game we did a few years back now. Arbroath Celtic replay, and Arbroath gave field on a cold, windy night. Yeah, it was a brilliant experience. It was the only ground where it was suggested to wear a safety harness to avoid being blown into the North Sea. Yeah. So that doesn't happen every day.
Yeah, I think the only ground that I've been to that's colder is probably Balmoor Stadium.
Ah, yes, yeah, I've been there too, and that was in August, I think. Yeah.
But the chips are good. I'll give them that. They do great chips.
So that always saves the day, doesn't it?
Sorry, what's that?
Always saves the day if you get a good bit of pie and chips.
Yeah. So if there was a rule you could change in football, what would it be?
I think they're so sort of big on this handball rule now, and they have adapted it since the season started, but I don't think they'll be happy until I think they want to actually just give any handball, give a penalty or whatever, or so and so. So I'm not a great fan of that rule, and when it was basically, I mean, when they're going on about silhouettes and natural positions and all that, fine if somebody's got their arm out like that, great, but when the ball gets hit at you from close range and it hits you on the arm, wherever your arm is really, I don't think you're, actually thinking I'm going to stop that with my hand. There's nothing else you can do. You can't react that quickly. So I think we still need to, the authorities could still work on that a bit and make it a bit clearer. But listen, it gives us all something to argue about, doesn't it?
It sure does. And I mean, I think that is one of the things that makes football so interesting, the fact that there's always something that you can complain about, and football fans love a moan.
Without a shadow of a doubt, yeah, and you're so right. When we do, the VAR in the Premier League is a good idea, and hopefully one day we'll have it in Scotland. But when it was brought in, I think the initial plan there was to only use it for clear and obvious errors. And I went to meetings about VAR, and they made it clear that they weren't going to use it for every single thing. And now they do seem to be forensically examining every single thing. So maybe there's a way of stepping back from that. Every incident is looked at, because some of the offside you see is so minute. I wouldn't even think anyone would complain, if there's a half a toe offside or something.
When they used it at the Russia World Cup, I was a massive fan of it, because I thought, well, the way they went over to the side of the pitch and would review the situation, I thought, as someone who has studied to be a referee before, I thought, well, because I ended up cashing it in, because I didn't like not having an assistant referee even under 13s, because I thought calling an offside is the worst thing in the world when you even don't have any assistant referees. So to then have people calling for not even having the virtual hindsight that VAR does offer, I think it's crazy, because as much as we like to complain about a penalty your team should have got, I mean, at the end of the season, when points are totaled up, it could be the difference between your team finishing in the top 6 or the bottom 6 or relegation.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. Well, as we've experienced then in refereeing, because I think when referees are told to go across and look at the monitor, that immediately puts a huge doubt in their mind that the other referee watching it back at Stockley Park VAR HQ obviously thinks something different, or So I think, are you going to go against the people who've told you to go and look at the monitor? I don't know. It's be interesting to get the mindset of a referee on that one.
Yeah, because it's always objective to every referee. I mean, you'll get one call being a stonewall penalty, and then another, and it'll be the same sort of situation, and the referee will give a completely different different decision. Yeah,
well, we saw Ben Mee, Burnley bundled over, and in a game recently, didn't we? And it was actually given against him, bizarrely. So, but yeah, hopefully we'll all get the hang of it. And but I don't think it needs to be on every single decision. There doesn't need to be a forensic examination.
It honestly doesn't, especially if it's like just a silly wee foul in the middle of the park that ends up somehow being a red card.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But now we're going to move on to talking about Scotland qualifying, because you were there in Belgrade.
Hooray!
Yeah. So over the years, from when you've been commentating, how many Scotland games have you covered that you'd consider a glorious failure for the national team?
Crikey, I'd probably lose count. There was that one against Italy, wasn't there, for was it Euro 2008?
Yes.
When I think Italy scored in the second minute and the last minute or something, when Scotland was so close to making it, and when they beat they beat Holland in the first leg of the playoff, but then got absolutely bumped in the second leg. Just so many over the years. I mean, I started commentating on Scotland in 1998 when. Obviously, the last time they qualified for a major tournament, not my fault, I hasten to add that they haven't done it since. And it's just been, so many nearly but not quite stories. And I so feel for the fans and for the Tartan Army over the years. And it's ironic, you mentioned you talked to Roy Hamilton, and he texted me on the night saying how ironic it was, because he's a huge Scotland fan, that he followed Scotland here, there and everywhere all around Europe and ended up watching them qualifying, sat on his sofa with his dog. And I thought that just kind of summed it up. It was also very Scotland on the night in Belgrade, and also, the fact that the Tartan Army weren't able to be there. And I think there would have been, 15,000 probably in Belgrade, enjoying the moment. But listen, they made it, they qualified, and let's hope the tournament goes ahead now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've only just started. I've only been a member of the Tartan Army for the last 3 years now, and my only away game was San Marino when we beat them 2-0, which was great, and it was a great trip. But as soon as the game started, it was awful.
Yes, I do remember that one. It wasn't the best, was it?
No, it really wasn't. Where were you the moment that Alexander Mitrovic had his penalty saved by David Marshall?
Well, we weren't able to travel to Belgrade because of the coronavirus restrictions, and we were going, but up until the last minute, it would have meant it was actually quite difficult to get there travel-wise, because obviously the plane timetables were fairly limited. So we actually had to cover the game from London, which is so unusual and was a bizarre experience. But again, tempered by the fact that I knew that there were 10, 15,000 other people who were missing out on a trip to Belgrade as well. So it was weird. We were, it was, I don't know, I just had a feeling as well with Mitrovic. He kind of saved himself for the glory last penalty, didn't he? And, it was ironic that in the Israel game, their main man, Zahavi, was the one who missed, or, David Marshall did the business. And the same with Serbia, really. But when that equaliser went in, when it went out for a corner, I remember saying in commentary that I actually felt sick at that moment, because everyone who's ever watched Scotland for any amount of time, every Scot probably, even if they're not into football, knew what was coming next from that corner, the equaliser. And, Scotland, the Scotland lads were brilliant. I thought deserved it over the 90 minutes, but it went to extra time when Serbia looked like they might nick it. And here we go, penalties again. But hey, we've got 100% record in penalty shootouts, Scotland now, and 10 out of 10.
It's just a shame we can't take group games in the Euros to penalties.
Yeah, that would be handy. But listen, I think I keep saying to me mates in England who think that it's a given that England will beat Scotland. I'm so not convinced because Steve Clarke, will know exactly what is required, and the Scotland squad will be decent. I say we because I've covered them for so long, and I feel more of a Scotland fan than an England fan, which again nobody believes, but it's true. But you look at the players in that squad, and I think. I would not surprise me one bit if they went and got a draw with England at all. The other two games are interesting as well. I mean, Czech Republic. I know Scotland played two very different Czech Republic teams, but to get a couple of games at Hampden as well, assuming they still play it the way they want to play it across a few countries. What a chance to actually get past the group stage. I keep mentioning this to my Scottish pals, and even now they're saying, "Listen, let's just be happy for now that we made it to a major tournament." I'm like, fine, but how about the next step and actually get out of the group?
Yeah. So because Scotland have never made it out of a group stage before, do you think 2021 is the year?
I really hope so. And like I say, I think they've got a chance, and I think, the two games after the Serbia, when they played in the Nations League, they kind of reminded us that they were still Scotland. With the performances weren't great, although probably should have won in Slovakia. Israel game was probably a game too far in a long international schedule, but I think when the tournament comes around, Steve Clarke will have it all sussed. Like I say, we've got some top players playing at top clubs in England and in Scotland. Sure, we've got sort of some positions where we've got a lot of players we could choose from, and others where maybe not the case. But yeah, I think now, and maybe a couple of years ago you wouldn't have said this, but now there'll be, sadly for some guys, they'll be missing out on a place in this squad because there's an awful lot of talent available.
Yeah, absolutely. So what is your favourite item of memorabilia you've picked up over your career?
Yeah, that's a good one. In terms of commentating, I normally keep sort of the match day I used to keep all programs, but I ran out of room basically, and just keep the big game ones now. I'm trying to think, but I was lucky enough to commentate or go to a couple of World Cups, 94 in America and 2010 in South Africa. So I've got a few mementos from there. But to be honest, I probably, in footballing terms, I go back to my childhood when I was 15 and West Ham beat Arsenal in the FA Cup final. Most of my mates down in Dorset, where I lived as a kid, were Arsenal fans. West Ham were in the old second division, as it was then. And they won 1-0, Trevor Brookings' header. And I've actually got a framed picture of the teams and things from that day on my office wall, which I often gaze up at, and also a picture of Bobby Moore, who I was lucky enough, I don't want to mention the World Cup victory or anything, it's not for that. I was lucky enough to work with Bobby at Capital Radio, and he was just a brilliant guy. You'd never known he was so humble, like a lot of footballers from that era. You'd never known that he had lifted the famous trophy. So those are a couple of pictures, along with a big Les Miserables poster on the office wall.
Of course. And for me, I'll just say, because I have to say this to every person in football I speak to, I have a signed artwork of James McFadden scoring that goal in Paris.
That's not bad. I like that. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Good old Faddy. That's actually one of the few Scotland games I've missed typically over the years, because I sort of darted off to Setanta to work for a while, and Bill Leslie was working on that. He got that great goal. So thanks, Faddy, for scoring that whilst I wasn't on duty, although I did do a lot of games for the World Feed at the time. But strangely enough, I did miss that one. But what a magic moment.
Yeah, and we also had
he's with us on Sunday, actually, at the Motherwell Rangers game. He'll be in the studio.
Yeah, I expected Faddy would be. He tends to do a lot of the Motherwell games when it's on Sky or whatever.
Yeah, he'll be there with Boydie.
Oh, that'll be great to see on TV. Did you see the clip of Boydie on put on Twitter last night from when one of the songs was blaring out at Parkhead last night, and he was just looking as if he absolutely hated the place.
Well, he never managed to score a goal there, did he? So it's
that's probably
one of the few places he didn't.
Yeah. So now we're on to the make or break round of the podcast. It's just going to be the sort of fun questions you probably wouldn't get asked in a normal interview.
Blimey, can't wait.
So you have to make a match day playlist, but can only choose 3 artists. Who's featured and why?
I would choose Neil Diamond because you know, I love his voice. I've seen him live actually, and he's possibly the best act I've seen live. Fantastic. And the more he sang, the more gravelly his voice became, and his version of "You Don't Bring Me Flowers" was just astonishing. So he'd be right up there. I'd probably choose the cast of Les Miserables as well, if I'm allowed to do that, for definite.
Definitely.
And yeah, and who else would I go for? Probably Billy Joel, to be honest, because I quite like a bit of Billy.
That's fair enough. If you could make a 5-a-side team of players that you've witnessed play in the flesh, who's in it?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, I'd have to go with Messi because I've been lucky enough to see him a few times. Although, funnily enough, in the games against Celtic, he didn't actually play that well a lot of the time, which is the only time I kind of covered him. I got to see quite a lot of Ronaldo at Manchester United and got to interview him once actually, and he was an absolute gent, brilliant to talk to.
Do you have his number?
No. And yeah, so do I need a goalkeeper in there? I suppose I do need a goalkeeper, don't I? Yeah, goalkeeper. Goalkeeper, I'd probably go for Phil Parkes, who I was watching as a kid at West Ham and actually met him last year, and terrific guy. Great meeting all the old players of that era, even though they make you feel old as well. A couple more players. I never got to see Bobby Moore playing in the flesh, so I can't really include him, but there was a guy at West Ham back in the sort of 80s called Alan Devonshire, who they signed from non-league football for £5,000, and he spent his career at West Ham and was just such an eloquent, brilliant player to watch. And then I'd probably stick with my childhood, to be honest, and go with Trevor Brooking at West Ham as well. But in terms of whilst I've been working, obviously Henrik Larsson was a great watch. Certainly the best player I've seen in Scotland. We had him for 7 years at Celtic and in Scottish football generally. And that I sort of started doing the Scottish not long after the Rangers team of Loudrup and Gaza. So obviously, had I been around for that, I think they would have been seriously challenging. But no, it's been really lucky to see so many great players over the years.
You're in the pick and mix aisle of a sweet shop and can only choose 3 sweets. What do you choose and why?
Oh, you know them fizzy little Coca-Cola things?
Yeah.
Quite like them. Yeah. And again, I keep harking back to my childhood here. I like those little rhubarb and crumble, the things that they do. Yeah. They were quite tasty as well.
I know them.
Yeah, they're not bad. But a long time since I went down the pick and mix counter, in fairness. Probably something a little chocolatey, as well, would definitely be on the agenda.
Fair game. And so now I've asked you some questions. Do you have anything to ask me?
Yes. How am I going to fare under their new manager?
I'm glad you asked that because I've prepared for it. So I'll be brief, but what I think since our first performance on Saturday under Graham Alexander, I thought the first half we actually played with purpose, and it's something that we sort of lacked under Robinson in the last few games. We've gone 11 games without a win, but in those games, I think there'd be about 4 or 5 where we should have easily picked up the 3 points in another day. I think what was going wrong for us was the fact that we were just trying to cover our backsides and just say, look, we're doing this, we're doing that, and then we'll be more positive in midweek in the presser, and we'll try and take that into the game, and it never worked. So what we needed was a change, and unfortunately it had to be Robbo, because, Robbo was great with me whenever I spoke to him. I got to interview him once as well. He was honestly one of the greatest managers that I've actually had any sort of connection with. But under Alexander, I think we're going to be better. I think we're going to be a bit more ruthless. We had a few chances on Saturday, which we should have taken as well. We could have been 3 or 4-0 up against St Mirren at half time. The penalty, which I don't know if you saw the penalty for St Mirren.
Yes, I went to the game actually, although it was hard to see from my angle. But yeah, so debatable. But I agree. First half, I mean, I go to watch. I quite enjoyed watching Motherwell last season. So when I had a free Saturday ahead of a live game, I did go and watch them quite a bit, and watched them quite a bit earlier this season. And it always seemed like they were playing, they were doing all right, but just not quite getting the results. And then obviously they went into this lull. But certainly in that first half, they looked like the old Motherwell that were a good watch. And like you say, should have been 3 up really, probably out of sight by then. But thought the signs were encouraging. But it's a bit unfortunate on Stephen Robinson because of the job that he did for Motherwell, which nobody would question was anything other than fantastic, not just in footballing terms, but in the money he made for the club and so on. So, but listen, he knows himself. He felt he'd taken them as far as he could, and that is football, some job. And I think Graham Alexander looks a really, really good fit for Motherwell.
Yeah, because what I like about Graham Alexander is he likes to attack teams, and I think that's what we were lacking, a bit of an attacking intent. So hopefully, I mean, I'm not expecting anything from Rangers on Sunday, but I think we'll start beating teams that we should be beating again, and I reckon we'll maybe finish about 7th or 8th this season, and then hopefully push up the table next season. But if we can maybe get a wee run in the cup as well, I'll be more than
happy. I don't think, I certainly don't think there's any that you'll be hanging around near the bottom of the table. There's too much talent in that squad for me, and he has left a good squad behind. And for whatever reason, they weren't doing it for a few, well, more than a few weeks. But yeah, it's I really like watching his team. The way he changed the style from when he initially came in as well. So I just enjoyed watching them, and they're always a good club good friendly club to deal with as well.
Yeah, and the thing is, some of the players that he's brought in that I just thought were never going to be reachable for Motherwell. For example, Boli Aribi, who we brought in from MK Dons, Nottingham Forest on loan for half a season. He was the greatest winger I've seen apart from James McFadden. Also, Rolando Aarons, I thought was an absolute coup. It's just a shame that we didn't see him for much longer because of COVID. But players, because I'm a winger myself, and I like to see a fast-paced, skillful winger at the club, and we never really had that replaced when we had the signings made at the start of the season.
No, but I mean, listen, I think they'll be fine. I really do. And I thought the first half was so encouraging on Saturday. I mean, I was like, watching, thinking this is we all the lads have been saying, the Sky Boys have been saying all season, when are Motherwell actually going to turn up and start their season effectively? And sadly, it might have taken Stephen's departure. And managers. I remember talking to Gary Megson years ago at West Brom, where he'd had extraordinary success, and I walked in his office one day and he was looking miserable. And I said, "What's up?" And he said, "Well, I've been here 4 years now." And he said, "I honestly think, for most managers, apart from the long-serving ones, of which there are a few these days, after 3 or 4 years, the players get bored of hearing the same stuff week in, week out." And he said, he left the job having done terrific there for. I think there comes a point, unfortunately, and managers know the score, don't they? They know the game.
Yeah, definitely. I heard something really strange about Gary Megson once. When Sheffield Wednesday signed Mark Reynolds from Motherwell, who was probably the best centre-half I'd seen at Motherwell in that time, because that was like my first couple of seasons. And he'd said Mark Reynolds was one of the worst defenders he'd worked with.
Really? That surprises me.
Yeah, which I thought was a surprise myself. But there you go. I mean, it goes to show that players don't always play the same under different managers.
No, and some players do go down to sort of England and it doesn't quite happen for them from Scotland, but equally some go down there and it certainly does happen for them, as we've seen in recent times. And I really enjoy, I'd keep all these players in Scotland for us to watch if I could, but I really enjoy watching Kieran Tierney, great lad, doing so well at Arsenal. And like I say, I've got a few mates who are Arsenal fans, and when they asked what they were getting when he signed, I said, you've got no problem there. You're getting a guy who's going to be one of the very best. And he's certainly, he's got over his injuries and all that is proving it. And he's such a lovely guy as well. Yeah. John McGinn, likewise. I lived in the West Midlands for a long time, and the Villa fans were saying, what are we getting with John McGinn? And I told him, and after about 2 weeks later, they were all saying, by the way, you were right.
Yeah. It's funny because Villa's actually my English team. If you were to
right.
if you were to hold me at knife point and say, what's your English team? I would just say Aston Villa because that's who my cousin supports. So
how good have they been this season? They've come on incredible. Probably, arguably, the team of the season so far.
Yeah, I mean, they're exciting to watch for once, and it's no longer just residing at the bottom of the table, which is good to see because I first started watching Villa when we had the likes of John Carew and were playing for like top 7 football. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's obviously I worked on local radio in Birmingham for many years in the 90s when Big Ron was in charge of Villa, and they won the League Cup twice, 94 and 96. So I was lucky enough to commentate on those 2 finals. And it's such a huge club, Villa, and the stadium is as I mentioned earlier, is one of the best around. I mean, it gives me a buzz walking into that stadium. It's got such a special feel to it. And, you know, when the fans are all in there, I remember watching a championship game there, funnily enough, 2 or 3 years ago, which I did go along just to watch, well, actually for a bit of hospitality as well. But it was Villa Leeds, and honestly, it was like, well, it should be a Premier League fixture and is now, obviously. But the atmosphere was like proper old school. The Leeds fans were, you know, terrific, crazy, loud, and the Villa fans, you know, as well, the same. And that was one of the best atmospheres I've seen in the Premier League, in not the Premier League, sorry, in English football in recent years. It happened to be then a championship fixture.
Yeah, that was always surprising, but then again, I think Aston Villa only spent about 2 or 3 seasons out with the Premier League.
They sort of stumbled to get back initially, but then made it. And certainly the size of the club, you know, they're back where they belong for sure. And I'm really pleased for John McGinn as well, one of the game's good guys, because and Jack Grealish, who I've seen quite a bit of over the years as well, is an extraordinary talent.
So I've just thought of this on the spot, but what is the best interview you've conducted?
The best interview I've conducted? Well, I've been lucky enough again to I keep saying that, I don't know, but I have been.
Just drop Ronaldo again, yeah.
Ronaldo, he was all right. I got turned down by David Beckham once, which was disappointing because I thought that might be quite good, but he wouldn't do the interview after a game. So, I did Fergie quite a few times at Man United because the year they won the treble, I did quite a lot of their Saturday afternoon games. And for me, he was the best because he kept you on your toes, and if he asked anything stupid, he'd certainly let you know about it. So I really enjoyed interviewing him, and I've been fortunate to do so many over the years. One that stands out for me is, funny enough, Bobby Robson when he was at Newcastle. Another great character in the game. And my first question was always, I didn't want to be opinionated because I don't think managers really appreciate that coming from a reporter or commentator. So I just used to give it a very bland, what did you think of the game? And Bobby Robson went off on an answer that must have lasted about 4 minutes, and I didn't need to come in again. Didn't need to ask a second question. Every time I thought I was coming in with a second question, he covered exactly what I was going to ask. So he did one answer, 4 minutes, covered every point in the game, and at the end just went, "Thanks, Bobby." Just so that was quite an experience, and another great football man. But so many over the years. Ronaldo was just an absolute gent, and I remember trying to get Roy Keane once at Old Trafford, and I forgot to say, "Could you do an interview, please?" And he got a bit irked with me about manners. But hey, if you're going to get told off by anyone, let's be told off by him. One of the players I most enjoyed watching over the years.
Of course. Well, I think we've covered everything I was going to ask, but I would just like to thank you for your time.
Pleasure. Enjoyed it.
And anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this podcast with Ian Crocker, and you'll, of course, be able to hear his lovely voice on Sky whenever there's a Scottish football match, I'm pretty sure. And hopefully you'll be reporting on a very, very successful match for Motherwell on Sunday.
I see your bias is coming out again now. We shall see. I think it'll be a good game, though. I think Motherwell will give them a game. But Rangers are just utterly ruthless and relentless at the moment, and amazing winning streak that they're on. So over to you, Motherwell, to try and stop it.
Well, here's hoping we do. Anyway, guys, thank you very much, and we'll see you later. Drive safe.